Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch with Crime Talk, and thank you for tuning in. A busy docket today. First, new details from South Carolina and the Faye Swetlik case. Second, a mom and daughter team up for an attempted baby abduction. Third, the Weinstein jurors are asking questions. What does it mean? Fourth, a marriage and family therapist is thrown from her balcony. Fifth, Lori Vallow and the new husband are on the move, doing some island hopping, but no kids in sight. And our dumb criminal contestant of the day. You just never know where those electric probes are going to land. Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. We truly appreciate you and realize that any success that we have had here at Crime Talk with Scott Reisch would not be possible without you. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like, and leave us a comment. We want to know what you have to think. Let's get to the docket. First, new details from South Carolina and the Faye Swetlik case. Now, for those of you who do not know, Faye Swetlik went missing on February 10th of 2020. She was found some 3 days later. The next door neighbor, who had no real connection with her, was also found deceased. The police are now saying that the two cases are connected, and what led the police back to an area where they had already searched was they were conducting more searches in the neighborhood, and an officer found a polka dot boot as well as a ladle filled with dirt. That led the police to go back to the neighbor's house, a Cody Taylor, who is 30 years old, and they ultimately led to the discovery of Faye. The coroner has determined that the cause of death is a homicide and the manner of death was asphyxiation. The coroner also attempted to determine and concluded that Faye more than likely passed away just a few hours after she was in fact abducted. Some 200 police officers had participated in the search for Faye, and obviously no one was hoping for the result that came about. This type of death will shock any community, let alone a small community like Casey, South Carolina, which is a suburb of Columbia, South Carolina, which is the capital. And in Casey, there's some 13,000 residents, so it's not a big town. And this really is the death of innocence when a young child like this takes place. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Faye. And obviously, we hope no parent ever has to deal with a tragedy like this, let alone where a child is simply minding their own business, playing in their own front yard, and for lack of a better term, someone she knows or even the stranger, the neighbor who is there, abducts her and does terrible things, obviously. Watch your kids, ladies and gentlemen. Be careful. It can happen so quickly. It's scary. Next on the docket, a mother and daughter team up for an attempted baby abduction. And listen to the scheme that they had concocted. So one of the suspects, Juliet Parker, who was actually a mayoral candidate in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and then had relocated to Washington State. Well, she put a post up on a group of a Facebook page, so to speak, offering to do a free newborn baby or expectant mother photography. And apparently Miss Parker had plenty of takers. But some of her behavior struck the customers as bizarre. Apparently, she kept taking selfies with all of the babies, according to the sheriff's department, and then she would wipe her fingerprints from everything that she touched, obviously sending up the weird signals to a lot of people. And then ultimately, there was a cupcake. So during a photo shoot on February 5th, Parker and her 16-year-old daughter offered the treat as a gift to a new mom, claiming they ran a bakery together. The woman ate it and almost immediately began starting to feel seriously ill. The unnamed woman ordered Parker and the 16-year-old girl to immediately leave, and then she called 911 for help. After Parker left, the woman accused her of covertly stealing her house keys. Now, police say they know why. It's alleged that part of Parker's plot to steal the woman's baby, flee the state, and raise the child as her own. Parker and her daughter have both been charged with attempted kidnapping, and the Sheriff's Department has been contacted by at least a dozen women who say that Parker came into their homes in recent weeks to take pictures of their babies while exhibiting the same strange and unusual behavior. It appears as though Parker had no prior criminal history. She worked as a marketer for a plumbing company in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She also ran for mayor in 2019, came in a distant second, and then moved to Washington State. Parker apparently, in her plan, was looking to take a baby girl under 5 weeks old and would pick her photography customers accordingly. Parker is currently out on a $50,000 bond, and there's no information as to the status of her daughter's case just yet, but the daughter is probably not going to be able to have contact with mom in this particular case. Just another bizarre case of baby stealing. You never heard of this stuff until recently, and it just seems like it's becoming more and more prevalent. It makes no sense. Next on the docket, the jurors in the Harvey Weinstein case began their deliberations today, and almost immediately upon commencing their deliberations, they sent questions. Now, remember, when a jury sends questions to the court cannot answer them in any particular way. They have to be very limited to that question. The court cannot speculate as to where they're going in any way. The answer that goes back has to be at least consulted with both the prosecution and the defense counsel. Obviously, it's easier if everybody agrees what the answer should be. For example, the question is about jury instructions. The answer is you have received all of the instructions. You must consult the law given to you and your collective memory as it relates to the facts of the case. Most of the time, transcripts cannot be prepared. Requests for jury exhibits, usually the jury gets copies of everything that has been presented at trial so they can reference them in their deliberations. But the next question is what does a juror question mean? Who knows? Okay. Now, the Harvey Weinstein jurors in this particular case requested a legal definition of the charges being considered, including forcible compulsion, consent, rape in the first, second, and third degree, and criminal sexual act. Now, that seems a little odd to me because normally those definitions are included in the jury instructions, because every time the jury instructions are given, it includes what the elements are for the case. And if there are any definitions that are defined in the statute, those are normally given. What gets really weird sometimes is when the legislature has chosen not to define a particular term and people wonder, what does it mean? And the judge has to say, use your common sense and collective knowledge and determine. You have been given all of the law and the facts in this particular case. Additionally, the jurors in the Harvey Weinstein matter wanted to confirm whether we could find the defendant guilty of both counts 4 and 5, or whether we can just find him guilty of 3, 4, or 5. We would like to confirm that we can only find the defendant guilty of count 1 only if the state has proven him guilty of both Mimi Haley, Annabella Sciorra, and that we can only find him guilty of count 3, the note reads. What does that mean? Does that mean that the jurors are thinking, hey, I want to convict him guilty of all these counts, but we'd like to find him guilty of more counts? Or is it just clarification? You just don't know. Whenever a jury asks questions, the first thing the client looks to you and says is, what does that mean? And the answer these days are, I don't know, because you simply don't. I've had questions come out and thought, oh, this is really good for us, right? Yeah, they're clarifying something, and the verdict comes back the completely opposite way. It could be a jury simply has a question, what does this mean? Or it could be trying to clarify for a holdout one way or the other to get their questions answered so that they are either satisfied that the elements have been proven or not, and so that they can move on with their deliberations. It's very hard to tell. Now, one of the weirdest and not best questions I ever had as a juror was I was representing an individual who was alleged of threatening judges. And we went through the trial, and I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was the best First Amendment argument you'd ever heard in your life, from my client. And the first question that comes out that says, does the defendant have access to our home addresses? Client asked, what does that mean? I said, I don't know, but I don't think it's good. Okay? Because they were obviously concerned about him and their results. So it didn't go well. So I went from the greatest thing since sliced bread to the biggest bag of trash in a matter of seconds. So you just never, ever know what a jury question means, except in that one particular case. And the only time I've ever had that kind of question usually is in a gang-related case where jurors are concerned about their own safety, and people are assured that it shouldn't matter in any way, that nobody has access to the juror information. In today's world, people could Google it, but let's face it, the defendant's not going to sit around and know all the jurors' names and things like that. So it's simply not anything to worry about. We will see how the Harvey Weinstein case develops. A lot of professional attorneys, consultants that sat in through these some 17 days of trial in the Harvey Weinstein case said that some of the evidence was compelling, but it was also did not outweigh the evidence that came through on cross-examination. And a lot of the professional juror watchers are thinking not guilty or at most a hung jury. I will tell you the defense made some compelling arguments, but these type of cases are so emotional. This case has received such high publicity, and jurors should not be mocked or ridiculed or criticized in any way. They're the ones that sat through the entire trial. They are the ones that sat through all of the evidence or the lack thereof, and they have to make that decision. So whatever they decide is going to be the correct decision. We'll wait and see what happens. Next on the docket, a marriage and family therapist is thrown from her balcony in a domestic violence dispute. Dr. Amy Harwick was apparently thrown from her third-story balcony at her home by her ex-boyfriend, Gary Pershouse, who's 41 and is now being charged with murder. Apparently, Dr. Harwick was having an argument, and in fact, the police had been contacted, and Dr. Harwick's roommate claimed that she was being assaulted. When the police arrived, they found Dr. Harwick, and she was in bad condition. She was unconscious, and the injuries were consistent with falling from the third-story balcony of her residence. Now, Miss Harwick had voiced concerns regarding Pershouse, her ex-boyfriend, and she actually had obtained a restraining order that had expired against him. According to police reports, there was evidence of forced entry and a struggle at her home. And when the police arrived, they also arrested Mr. Pershouse, who was present at the residence. Now, unfortunately, a case like this usually doesn't get that much attention. It would just be another terrible domestic violence case of an ex-lover who had a protection order there. But in this particular case, Dr. Harwick was one time engaged to Drew Carey, who is the comedian and the host of The Price is Right. Obviously, they didn't get married, but that is the reason why this case probably got so much notoriety, because unfortunately, it probably wouldn't get more than a quick blip on there, but for her association with Drew Carey. Next on the docket, Lori Vallow. For those who do not recall, Lori Vallow and her new husband, Chad Daybell, have been staying in Kauai over the past few months, and they refused to cooperate with police and the FBI as to the whereabouts of Lori's daughter, 17-year-old Tylee Ryan, and their adopted son, Joshua J.J. Vallow. These two children have been missing since September. The police and the courts have been completely stopped in their tracks as it relates to the cooperation or lack thereof of Lori Vallow Daybell and her husband. These kids haven't been seen, and yet nobody seems to be able to come up with a way to get them back to Idaho to produce the children and to make sure that their whereabouts and their safety is known. These parents have shown no remorse, no concern whatsoever that these children are okay, but yet at the same time they refuse to provide any information regarding their children. That just defies logic, and eventually the truth will come out, but the state can't prosecute yet because they don't yet know if any crime has been committed. I would think a creative district attorney or a creative county attorney would get unique in their charging documents or create a petition or something for truancy or something to get the family back there to answer because it's unclear when the judge in Idaho ordered that they basically produce information and nothing was done, whether even a show cause or contempt order was issued. It would appear that Ms. Vallow and her boyfriend are island hopping over there in Hawaii and have no concerns whatsoever. We'll keep you updated. So both Lori Vallow and the new husband both have issues regarding their ex-spouses. Both passed away rather quickly, and authorities are taking a look at those cases as well. We put up the link the other day to the 911 call where Lori Vallow's brother, who killed her ex-husband, and a call was made by a juvenile on there. You take a listen. This case gets weirder and weirder as things go by. But the truth, sometimes it may take time, but the truth does come out. And finally on the docket, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Our contestant for the day is Stephen Short, 28. Now, Mr. Short is known to this particular grocery store as a shoplifter. And on this particular date, Mr. Short was seen stuffing food into his pants. Well, the store manager and a civilian at the store detained Mr. Short, and while the police were arriving, Mr. Short literally came out of his pants and ran away. And when he got out of his pants, stakes stumbled out of his pants as well. And when Mr. Short was able to get away, he was literally without his pants, and 4 packs of ribeye steaks valued at $41.24 were found in his pants. Mr. Short, while running away naked, was told to stop by the police when they arrived. The officers ultimately used a taser on Mr. Short, and he was detained. Mr. Short was charged with resisting an officer without violence, resisting a store employee while committing a theft, and first-degree petty theft. Mr. Short, although still in custody, had to be taken to the hospital after it was discovered that a taser prong had stuck in his genitals during his attempted escape. That's all we have for you today. We hope you enjoyed the show. As I stated, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Hit that like button. Leave me a comment. What are your thoughts on the Faye Swetlik matter? Do you think that Harvey Weinstein is going to walk, or is he going to be convicted? And Lori Vallow, what could possibly be her good reason not to cooperate with the police? Can you think of any? Let me know. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk.